Ram Trucks on a country road. I'm Chris Lawrence, and it's November. We're out in the middle of deer season, but while you're deer hunting, the fish are still biting. My buddies Mark and Andy Godwin invited me up to Burnsville Lake. Let's take a look at what they're talking about.
There you go.
Nice one.
All right. Look at that, Hank. Burnsville special. Got one, Hank. Big one. Oh yeah. There you go, Hank. Barely hooked.
I've never thought Mark might leave me here.
He's had enough.
Well, as you can see, what a day fishing here at Burnsville Lake. I would have never dreamed that you could catch fish that big in the middle of November during deer season. But these guys, Andy Godwin, Mark Godwin, have always told me you need to come up here one day out of your deer hunting during buck season. This is when we catch big fish. We'll start with you, Andy. How did you do that?
Well, we caught some big fish today, mainly by flipping and pitching, things like that. You know, the cover would be wood cover, some rock, anywhere that you could get a little bit of heat going. The water temperature's pretty cold today, so wherever we think we could have more sunlight and more heat is what we've done today.
Mark, you mentioned that normally it's not, water isn't this cold, but that October snow we had changed things up a little.
Yeah, chilled it off. And the situation actually today was the water wasn't, it was actually warming up instead of cooling off. What happened was we got the snow. It cooled the water down into the high 30s. We started this morning at the 40, 41, 42 degree mark, and it warmed up to 48 degrees, which normally this time of year you'll start 48, 49 degrees and warm up into the mid to low 50s, and the fish are on a lot better.
Most people think you can't catch fish when water's that cold, that they're just not going to bite. Clearly that's not the case, Andy.
No, we've caught them clear here, even in the shallow water. I busted the ice and got on the lake and caught fish here, and good fish in 38 degree water.
Wow. What do you use? I mean, you were telling you were pitching a jig. Show us what you're using.
Well, we've been pitching different things today. This here is just a generic 4-inch tube. We got a 4-aught Rocky Brook Sinker extra wide gap hook, super line. I'm flipping this on a big 7-foot 6-inch or 7-foot 11-inch extra heavy Kitzler rod and 65-pound braid. The water's dirty, so line size really doesn't matter.
And what about you?
Well, jigs.
All
just
right.
like
What
you
about
said,
the jig?
Tube or jig. I like to use a jewel jig. It's a jewel flipping jig. It's a small 3/8 ounce jig and then I just use one of their signature crawl trailers on the back of it. But it gets a nice slow fall. You don't want anything too erratic and too fast. These fish are still a little lethargic. They're not ready to just chase down anything. Later in the day, at times they will. If the water moves into the high 50s, then you can pull out a spinnerbait.
Right.
You can, and I like to use a Colorado bladed spinnerbait because the water's dirty.
Yeah.
It helps them.
You mentioned too today, Andy, that when you got a stump that you can see it's submerged, it's not going to come out from under that stump to grab it. You've got to almost put it right on his head, and he'll just grab it and stop. Right. And then you got to set the hook.
A couple of the big fish that we caught today, you'd pitch a jig or a tube in and it goes down to the bottom of the stump. You check it one time and you just feel a little resistance. When you pull up on it, you know, you can feel that it was a fish. They'll sit there with it and not move, and then you can, you know, set the hook on him and bring him up out of the cover. And then, you know, as you saw, we boat flipped some of the fish today.
And the other thing is you got the whole lake to yourself because everybody's deer hunting all
Yeah.
around you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So you know,
we
and
had 2 or 3 deer hunters pass us on the water. That was it.
Yeah.
it's the lake's small, and of course with the water coming down, it is a little dangerous. You know, if you're going to come to Burnsville and fish it, you know, in the fall when the water is coming down, you need to really be careful because the flats that are covered with water are just barely covered with water.
Right.
You know, so you can get yourself stuck or lose a lower unit or something if you don't watch what you're doing. But you can, if you feel your way around, there's plenty of good places to fish from Knowles Creek down.
And clearly they'll bite.
Yeah, clearly they will. In any creek, you know, I mean any creek, Knowles Creek, Main Lake, you can catch them anywhere.
All right.
What happens to some of the fish when it starts warming up, they'll come up from off the bottom and kind of suspend in the trees. And we caught a couple fish today. I think it was caught on like one of the big shallow diving crankbaits. You know, a pretty good size crankbait
Right.
suspended up in the top of the trees. That's generally going to be your later in the afternoon bite or even your
When the sun
early
warms
evening
everything
bite.
up.
Right. Once the temperature comes up.
1:32 to late in the day. Yeah.
Well, guys, I enjoyed it. I think Hank enjoyed it too. Hank, did you have a good time?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can tell you're so enthusiastic back there. Hank caught a fish though, so that's cool. Guys, appreciate it. Appreciate you bringing us up. Always good to see you
Always good to
guys.
see you.
All
Nice to have you.
Mark and Andy Godwin, and that's going to do it. I'm Chris Lawrence for Ram Trucks on a Country Road.